How's it going, everybody? This is Braden with Shark Sickle Gaming. I'm coming at you with a deck tag today. This is something that I've been dreaming of for a while. I think I'm going to go ahead and record two and post two videos back to back of the two decks that I sat on the longest in my head without actually building them. The first one is this one. It's Rakdos Chaos. I've just loved, and by loved I mean felt very uncomfortable with the idea of that much chaos in a deck. The idea of not having all that control. But the more that I played, the more I realized that, man, you watch these CEDH games and stuff, and there's just so much of Commander that becomes repetitive, or that you're just kind of playing by yourself, and there's very little interaction. And so I thought to myself, well, how do I create games that are interactive, that have you and your opponents all communicating more, interacting more, and all those things. So I came up with two decks. This is the first one of those, and this is Rakdos Chaos, and the other one you'll just have to wait and see. But with Rakdos Chaos, I wanted it to be silly. I wanted it to be random. I wanted it to be kind of mean. I wanted it to kind of not necessarily even be shooting to win the game, but just to have the biggest impact on the board. If that makes me a target, so be it. Although what I found in playing this deck is that typically what happens is people are less keen to go after you, because oftentimes a lot of the effects are random, and so people don't really necessarily want to target you because you're not targeting anyone. You're just playing your deck. The commander is going to be Vial Smasher, the Fierce. Speaking of CEDH, right? If people want access to red and black, a lot of people are playing Vial Smasher. The extra damage is nice. But no, I just do this for funsies. It says random on the card, and that's what I did for a lot of this deck. The first thing that we're going to go over is the stack of cards that have the word random in the text box is kind of insane. But Vial Smasher here, if I can get it to, there you go. So whenever I cast my first spell each turn, it deals damage equal to that spell's CMC to an opponent at random. So, I mean, there you go. Can't hurt. Well, let's start by then the meat and potatoes of this deck, which is the idea of randomness as it pertains to Magic the Gathering. Oftentimes when I'm playing this deck, I'll play the targeted spells in a random way, where I'll roll dice to determine outcomes and stuff like that, because I just think it adds an extra element to that and really plays into the whole, like, you can't come at me because I'm not doing this on purpose. And the first thing on here is Scramble Verse. Now this one, for each non-land permanent, choose a player at random. Each player gains control of each permanent for which they were chosen. Untap those permanents. 8 mana spell, big spell. But basically give someone else... well, it's not even someone else, so you could get it back yourself, right? But basically, for every permanent that's not a land, everybody to roll a d4. I mean, this card probably takes 10 minutes to resolve, but is absolutely insane. Witch Hunt. Players can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 4 damage to you. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent chooses target opponent chosen at random gains control of this. So this is just this fun little thing. This hot potatoes around the room. Everybody's taking 4 damage from it, but nobody's really feeling like it's targeting them. You know what I mean? Whims of the Fates, similar to Scramble Verse. 6 mana on this one. Starting with you, each player separates all permanents they control into 3 piles. Each player chooses one of his or her piles at random and sacrifices those permanents. This includes lands. So this is scary, right? But oftentimes what me and my friends do is we'll put all of our cards in one pile and just roll the die, and hope that you don't lose everything that you have. But that's a whole lot better than losing a third of your stuff every time. You could potentially lose all your stuff a third of the time, right? Wild Evocation, another 6-drop. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player reveals a card at random from their hand. If it's a land, they get to drop it, and if it's a spell, they get to cast it without paying its mana cost. So, lots of fun, wild chaos. Next, we've got Balor. It's a 5-mana 5/5 flyer. When it attacks or dies, choose one or more, but each mode must target a different player. So, if it attacks or dies, target opponent draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. I mean, worst case scenario, it's basically target opponent mills 3, right? Target opponent sacks a non-token artifact. And Balor deals damage equal to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. So basically, I mean, I can just attack with this thing and get all 3 effects. And I can choose those at random, too, with dice rolls, even though this doesn't say that. So that's kind of fun. Raving Dead, 5 mana, 2/6 Death Touch. The beginning of combat on my turn, I choose an opponent at random. This thing's got to attack that player if able. If he deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life total rounded down. So again, it's never coming at anyone. It's a 2/6 Death Touch, so it's kind of, you know, I mean, you have to devote usually a kill spell to this. You know, usually you don't have a 6/6 that can deal with it. This is Zeroth, Chaos Rider, 3 mana, 2/3. If an opponent draws a first card each turn, if it's not their turn, so like think Smothering Tithe, right? You get to create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So basically your opponents are drawing all kind of cards on your turn, or later there's some chaos cards that kind of let players draw cards and stuff like that. And so if they're drawing all these cards and it's not on their turn, then I get to start making these devils. And if a devil attacks a player, me and all those players draw a card, then discard a card, there's more devils, you know what I mean? So it's crazy how quickly this thing snowballs. I couldn't build a chaos deck without a deck of many things, and I got the foil full art because it was basically the same price as the regular one, because nobody's playing this card. But basically, this card specifically performs well in this deck because of the fact that so many things in this deck have me discard my hand. So its effect, the 20 is insane. I'll start down there. Put a creature card from any graveyard into the battlefield under your control. If that creature dies, its owner loses the game. So this card is only really, really insane because of the fact that so many things in this deck having me discard my hands. So as long as my hand is at 0, I have a 1 in 20 chance of hitting that D20 and getting it. The problem is that, you know, I'm subtracting the number of cards in my hand from this, so it has to be 0 to ever hit that D20. But the 10 through 19 of draw 2 cards for 2 mana, I'll take that every time. And then the 1 through 9 of putting a card at random from my graveyard to my hand, I'll take that every time. So I don't think that I can lose with this card. I think it's amazing. Tyrant of Discord, 7 mana, 7/7, big red boy. When he enters, target opponent chooses a permanent they control at random and sacrifices it. And if it's non-land, you just keep going. And the thing is that it says repeat this process, so I'd have to look at the rulings on this because I actually don't know if I get to choose a different opponent or if I keep having to target the same opponent. But either way, I think this card's insane because somebody could lose like all of their non-land stuff before they ever lose a land in theory, right? Burning Inquiry, each player draws 3, then discards 3 at random. There you go, with that Goblin Maker card. Wildfire Devils, 4 mana, 4/2. When it enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, choose a player at random. That player exiles an instant or sorcery card from their graveyard. Copy that card, and you can cast it. Keep in mind, this says player, right? So this isn't even just opponents, right? You can cast your own stuff again. Possibility Storm. Whenever any player casts a spell from their hand, that player exiles it, then exiles cards from the top of their library until he or she exiles a card that shares a card type with it. You cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then the owner puts all exiled cards with Possibility Storm at the bottom of your library. So basically, whatever spell you thought you were going to play, that card goes to the bottom of your library, and instead we flip cards from the top until we get something that shares a type with it. You play a Llanowar Elves, actually, sorry, you get yourself I'm blanking on the big guy, you know what I mean? But Blightsteel Colossus, whatever, like you name it, right? That's what you get instead. So it's kind of insane, very chaotic. Collision of Realms, 7 mana sorcery. Each player shuffles all creatures they own into their library. Each player who shuffled a non-token creature into their library this way reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card and put that card onto the battlefield and the rest in the bottom of their library in a random order. So basically, 7 mana, all creatures back into their libraries, and then if you put a creature into your library, you basically get to flip until you hit a creature and put that card onto the battlefield. So that's really fun. Explosion of Riches, 6 mana, draw a card. Each other player may draw a card. If a card's drawn that way, it deals 5 damage to target opponent chosen at random from among your opponents. So basically, I'm going to draw a card. If all 3 of them decide to draw a card, great. I'm rolling 3 die and seeing who those 5 damage gets thrown at. But this could be where, somebody decides, yeah, all 3 of us want to draw a card, and then one of my opponents takes 15 damage. I mean, it's kind of silly. Capricious Fleet, 6 mana, 6/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target non-land permanent you control, and up to 2 target non-land permanents you don't control. Destroy one of them at random, right? So, yikes. I'm picking one of my things, and I can be political about this. I can pick 2 people's things. I can pick 2 of 1 people's things. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And you get to kind of have all of that inside there. Maddening Hex, 3 mana, enchanted player. This is a curse. Whenever enchanted player casts a creature spell, non-creature spell, roll a d6. It deals damage equal to that player or equal to the result. Then attach Maddening Hex to another one of your opponents chosen at random. So basically, it just keeps going all around. And I'd have to see, because of the wording, if the player that controlled it at the time, I'm fairly certain this means that that could come back to me as well, which is, I mean, even better for the deck, right? And then Elkin Lair, this is an older one, but it's from I think this is Visions. And this is 4 mana, enchant world. During each player's upkeep, that player chooses a card at random from their hand and sets it aside face up. I think that would be eroded to exiles it face up. That player may play that card as though it were in their hand, and if they don't this turn, it goes to the graveyard. So that's kind of interesting. Basically, it's like separating one card from your hand and giving you the thing of like, do you want to play this turn, or is it fine to go to the yard? Okay, so that's all the chaos stuff. From here, it's just Rakdos good stuff. A Sire of Insanity at the beginning of each end step. Each player discards their hand, so I've dropped this and we all discard our hands. Xantia was very nearly the commander for this deck, but I just think Vial Smasher has more sex appeal, more curb appeal. 3 mana 5/5 that you give to an opponent is very strange in Commander. I think it's silly and I like it. Repaying Kind, 7 mana. Each player's life total becomes the lowest life total among all players. This card, actually, I'll flip back to it because I think it's kind of funny that it exists in the deck. That card, coupled with, if it's in the deck at all, which I know it is, Triskaidekaphobia, right? I mean, we could have a draw here, you know, if everybody's life total becomes 13 and then my upkeep starts and everybody has 13 life, right? So that's kind of funny. But I also think that card's just chaotic in general, because like nobody's really sitting there thinking, oh, okay, I'm at 13 life. Oh no, you know. Chaos Moon. This is similar to Blood Moon, but not really. 4 mana enchantment. During each player's upkeep, count the number of permanents. That's all permanents. If that number is odd, all red creatures get +1/+1, and mountains produce an additional red mana until end of turn. If the number's even, all red creatures get -1/-1, and all mountains produce colorless mana. So, my friend with a goblin deck should never play against this card. He's got his Krenko, and it will not be good. Endless Whisper, 4 mana. Each creature has, when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, choose target opponent. That player puts this creature card from the graveyard into play under their turn until end of turn. Or at end of turn, sorry. So basically, like, if all creatures have when I die, give me to an opponent at random, basically, which is just insane. Oh, not even random, like you can choose, so it can get super political or anything like that. Mana Barbs, if a land is tapped for mana, deals 1 damage to their controller. That's pretty understandable. And then we have all of the accelerators. Furnace of Wrath, double all damage assigned to any creature or player. Dictate of the Twin Gods, if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. And we got Gratuitous Violence, if a creature I control will deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. So that gets kind of silly really fast. 5 mana 4/4 Menace Death Touch. This is Dire Fleet Ravager, and when he enters the battlefield, each player loses a third of their life rounded up. Heartless Hitsegu, 5 mana 4/3, tap it. He deals damage to each player equal to half their life total, rounded down. So that is actually something kind of interesting, because it is damage, right? It's not loss of life, as most of these things are. And so if you have, you know, a Dictate of the Twin Gods, right, then Heartless Hitsegu could potentially wipe the whole board if everybody's on even numbers. And if they're on odd numbers, he'll leave everybody super, super low. So that's like actually, you know, such a crazy combo. Rakdos the Defiler, 6 mana, 7/6 Flying Trampler. Whenever he attacks, I have to sack half the number of non-demon permanents I control. And that does say permanents, which means lands, you know, included. But when he deals combat damage to a player, they sack the number of non-demon permanents they control rounded up. So that's insane. Havoc Festival, 6 mana players can't gain life at the beginning of their upkeep. They lose half their life, rounded down. I'm sorry, rounded up. Master of Cruelty is 5 mana, 1/4, first strike, death touch. He has to attack alone, and whenever he attacks and is not blocked, that player's life total becomes 1, and he assigns no combat damage this turn. An Omen Machine, 6 mana, players can't draw cards. At the beginning of each player's draw step, they exile the top card of their library, and if it's a land, they can put it on the battlefield, or they cast it for free. So there's 2 of those effects in the game. One is taking cards that are already in your hand and doing that with it. This one's taking cards off the top instead of drawing. The rest is just Rakdos. We've got Fatal Grudge, Triskaidekaphobia, D-Demon, Arcbond, I think, is a fun card. Lavaborn Muse. There's a few things in this deck that kind of abuse on the fact that, my opponents may have no cards in hand or whatever. Rakdos Charm, Dreadbore. Death by Dragons, I think, is funny because it's a 6 mana. And it says each player other than target player puts a 5/5 dragon with flying onto the battlefield. This is the kind of card that 100% of the time I'll roll the dice on, and I'll roll a d4 and even include myself, which means that I may be paying 6 mana to give everybody else a 5/5 flyer. That's just the flavor of the deck, dude. I don't even care. Antagonism, 4 mana, enchantment. During each player's discard phase, this card deals 2 damage to them unless one of their opponents was dealt damage this turn. Now, it doesn't say by them, so that is kind of cool, but like basically if you're not dealing damage, or if one of your opponents didn't bleed this turn, you're taking 2. Blood Scrivener, 2 mana. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, instead draw 2 cards and lose 1 life. There we go, talking about this card in my hand all the time. Rakdos, Lord of Riots, 4 mana, 6/6. I can't cast the spell unless an opponent lost life this turn. He's a flying trample, and creatures cost 1 less for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. Mahadi, Emporium Master, also an option for a commander for this deck, because he's a 3 mana, 3/3 at the beginning of my end step. Create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. Board wipe and drop Mahadi, beginning of end step. I get 75, treasure tokens or whatever. Firewheeler, Master of Feasts. I just put this in because I have the French one. He's a 3 mana, 5/5 flyer. At the beginning of my upkeep, each opponent draws a card. So that's, game acceleration. Valky, I've got the full art borderless, so I did put him in. But also, he's chaotic as hell, man. Taking copies of stuff or becoming copies of stuff, or even on the backside. Tybalt. God of Trickery, right? Exiling things. I just think he's cool. And you get the emblem, right? So you get to cast stuff for free. He's a really cool flavor card, and I think that when you've got a card that pretty, he can be a pet card. There can be one. Chef's Kiss, 2 board wipes in Garrick's Wake and Deadly Tempest, and then from there it's just lands. There's some non-basics in here. I've got the Foreboding Ruins, the check lands. I've got the Pathway in foil. I've got the Slow Land. I've got the Filter Land. I've got the Scry Land, and then after that it's just a few utility lands and stuff, nothing crazy. Mostly basics. It's red-black, and all of our spells are so expensive anyway that we really don't want things coming in tapped, if at all possible. And then there's a handful of mana rocks as well, a Key Rune, and mostly this one's here because I've got the Rakdos version of it, so if it's going to have the symbol on it, why not? Signet, Soul Ring, Commander Sphere, and Arcane Signet. So yeah, Rakdos Chaos. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think of any other cards. But man, I just got on MTG Familiar and just searched up random in text box and just saw what popped up, and it was actually crazy how many cards care, or how many cards feed into the random element, because people often talk about other RPGs, or tabletop games rather, like Hearthstone and stuff, of or why Magic Arena is as popular as it is. It's like, man, you get all these chaos elements and stuff, but no, that exists on paper, man, and it's fun, and it's heavy, and you don't want to play this deck back to back to back, because some of these spells do take several minutes to resolve. But nobody has a bad time playing against this. Everybody just thinks it's super silly. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you would absolutely hate this, if this would be a rule zeroed out of being played against, or if you love it and you wish that you'd thought of it first, or any cards that you think might be fun in it. I'm always open to suggestions. Thank you so much, and do look for my other video that should be coming out at the same time. I'll probably put a card here once that video's up, of the other deck that I've just been sleeping on for a while. And thank you guys so much. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave those comments if you have any criticism or constructive criticism. Thank you.